Right choice.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. The Arizona Cardinals have a new head coach, Jonathan Gannon, former defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, edging out Lou Anarumo, defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, there's going to be a lot to break down about this hire. And I'm going to talk a lot about it in depth. What do I think it was the right hire? No. And I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why. Do I think it's an upgrade over Cliff Kingsbury? Absolutely. Has this offseason been a win so far for Michael Bidwill? Absolutely. Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury are no longer here. That's a win. So when it comes to where we are now, looking at the Arizona Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon taking the charge, Monti Ossenfort, who he has a history with Gannon, seems like that was his guy. Cool. Michael Bidwill is empowering a first-time GM who knows a lot more about football than he does. So that's a win. What does it mean for the future of this team? Don't know. What does it mean for the culture shift that this team so desperately needs? Don't know. What I do know is that people that I've talked to around the Eagles organization were happy to let him go. So I don't know how glowing that can be if people who are either covering the team or, know about the team a lot more than I do have said, cool, thank you. Can't always be super excited and not having a ringing endorsement like, oh man, I really wish Jonathan Gannon didn't leave this organization. You got a good one. I haven't heard a whole lot of that. I know that the Eagles defense has been towards the top of the NFL over the last 2 seasons since he's been defensive coordinator. I also know that the quarterbacks that they played in 2022, not good. 29th strength of schedule. The 2 playoff games that they lost in the last 2 seasons, I know one was to Tom Brady and one was to Patrick Mahomes, but his defenses gave up a collective, I think, 68 or 69 points. Not nice. The playoff games they did win this year, one was against the Giants and Daniel Jones, the third time they played in 5 or 6 weeks. And the second one was against Christian McCaffrey, quarterback, with the San Francisco 49ers. While he's going to be an upgrade over Cliff Kingsbury, that is a win. The Cardinals are far better off now than they were at the start of the 2022 season regarding the structural, situation that is the coaching staff, at least the coaching that we do know that will be going into 2023, and GM with Steve Keim not being there. But when people ask, is this your thought process because of what we saw in the Super Bowl? No. Did the Super Bowl help? No. You can't say, oh, it's because it was Patrick Mahomes. You can't say, oh, it was the holding call. You can't say, well, it was a 1-score game. They gave up a lot of points in the second half due to the inability to make adjustments. What have we been witnessing the last 4 seasons at head coach? A head coach who is completely unable to make adjustments. I don't understand why it's not more clear for people to see Jonathan Gannon has Cliff Kingsbury tendencies. Now, we haven't seen him as a head coach. We haven't seen him as leader of men in full capacity. But just because the defense put up good sack numbers in 2022 does not mean he's going to be a good head coach. What the defense showed in Philadelphia was whenever they played a good team, the defense wasn't as good as when they played the Giants. The defense wasn't as good when they played the Washington professional football team, the Commanders, even though they lost to them once. Look at the body of work Jonathan Gannon is DC in 2021 and 2022. Look at the opponents and then look at the roster and the talent that he had. I'm over the moon that Cliff Kingsbury is not the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals still. That's a win for Jonathan Gannon. And that is extremely exciting for all of us. So I'm not like saying this is not going to work out. This is a terrible hire. I just don't think it was the right choice. That doesn't mean it's not going to work. I've talked about this all offseason that one or two of these first-time head coaches are going to pop. And Michael Bidwill needed to find one of the two who are going to pop. And if it's Jonathan Gannon, if this defense is going to elevate, if this team is going to change in the trajectory that everybody hopes it will, away from the maligned past and on a journey to actual success every year, sign me up, baby. When I was watching the Super Bowl, I saw Cliff Kingsbury as the DC of the Philadelphia Eagles. The inability to make adjustments when the lights are brightest. Well, it was the Super Bowl. What do you want your team's aspirations to be? Do you want the stigma of the head coach saying, well, coaches really well against bad teams? No. You want your team to win a Super Bowl? We saw when there was adversity afoot what that defense looked like in the second half when adjustments were desperately needed. There weren't any. Now, with him as head coach, you're going to have a DC as well. You'll have an offensive coordinator. Like, he's going to hopefully be cocooned with veteran talent. Now, I don't know exactly what they're going to do with OC. Is Eric Bieniemy an option? I'm going to talk about why I think he's the best option out there, and I'm going to talk about it in depth next. But before I do that, like, the checkpoints here. Jonathan Gannon, new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. The last we saw from this person was the second half of the Super Bowl. So is this thought process based solely and solidified solely on that 30 minutes of football? No. I've dove deep in the last 2 years of Eagles football, and I saw a direct correlative between strength of opposition and the amount of points the Eagles defense gave up. That Eagles defense this year was a Madden on easy defense, talent-wise. And that's why when you come to Arizona and the defense has been neglected a little bit over the last offseason and a half, there's going to need to be a lot of player development quickly for this Cardinals defense to stack up in 2023, especially with Kyler Murray on the shelf for potentially half the season. I don't see this as, oh no, what have they done? That's not what this is. I just think that out of the two, I would have taken Lou Anarumo because that defense, a less talented defense with a much stronger strength of schedule last season, gave him 20 points a game. Held Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life in Kansas City. And they were a couple bad penalties away from potentially making the Super Bowl. That's why I'm not surprised, but not upset, just a little disappointed. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. A little bit more in depth about Jonathan Gannon. He's been around the game for a long time, still young. He fits that mold for hotshot coordinator, becomes next head coach. Shane Steichen, his counterpart, the offensive counterpart, took the job with Indy today. There needs to be like a weighted blanket of support from the coordinators that the Cardinals choose moving forward to be around this first-time head coach. Is Eric Bieniemy the right choice? I'll talk about it next. Locked On Cardinals. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is not only, like, let me put it this way. When you're at your best, you can do great things, okay? But sometimes life gets you bogged down and you may feel overwhelmed or like you're not showing up in a way that you want. And working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything life throws at you. So if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Jonathan Gannon, the new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Okay, Monti Ossenfort's guy. Michael Bidwill empowering Monti Ossenfort. Cool. I don't think Michael Bidwill had a choice. Michael Bidwill understands that the last 10 years have been farcical at times. So this was an obvious move. This wasn't like a praise Michael Bidwill situation. For that, he's like, yeah, I know that what I've been doing isn't working, so let's try something different. Now, they've checked the box of head coach and GM. Good. Arizona Cardinals 2.0 can officially be ushered in. The draft, right around the corner. Free agency, right around the corner. I've said, and I'll continue to say, 2 off seasons, and this team can look incredibly different on a trajectory that we never thought possible for the Arizona Cardinals. It starts with this season and this offense, coupled with Jonathan Gannon's defense, led by the DC. I don't know if they're going to keep Vance Joseph. I don't know if Jonathan Gannon's going to bring in one of his own guys. TBD. Just real quickly, stop it with the Vance Joseph hate. Look at the numbers last year offensively. Please. I know that Vance Joseph wasn't great last year. I also know that he was set up to fail because they neglected the defense all offseason. Both can be true. And I feel like the latter had a lot more impact than the former, especially when the offense was set up for all the success, and for injuries and otherwise, it didn't happen, leaving the lesser than defense talent-wise out to dry. Should Eric Bieniemy be the next offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals? This is a resounding yes for me. I don't know. Is there something bigger than resounding? I don't know. But I think Eric Bieniemy, especially after winning the Super Bowl, and especially now that Andy Reid ain't going anywhere for a while, it seems, the fastest track for Eric Bieniemy to get a head coaching job is to flourish as an offensive coordinator somewhere else. And why not with the Arizona Cardinals? This should be a 2-year deal because it ain't going to happen next. It's not going to happen in 2023 if Kyler misses a chunk of time. But going from a player's coach who gave fruit breaks and cell phone breaks during meetings to Jonathan Gannon and Eric Bieniemy, more enforcing guys, I feel like would do wonders for Kyler Murray, for this organization as a whole. So if you bring in a seasoned vet like Eric Bieniemy and give him the keys to the offense, and Jonathan Gannon and whatever defensive coordinator they either retain or bring in can rework that defense, Cardinals could be good a lot quicker than people think. It's going to take a solid draft, a solid offseason, and maybe another solid draft to really correct what Steve Keim did. But I've gone back and forth. It's like, well, could Eric Bieniemy be the next head coach? When I tweeted that out, I said Eric Bieniemy, they should hire Eric Bieniemy before Jonathan Gannon as head coach. Obviously, I have a massive string of this is the thing that should not happen. And it went back to Sam Bradford. I'm like, if the Cardinals sign Sam Bradford or Mike Glennon, I quit. Signed them both within a week. Like, killer. I mean, it's just bing, boom, boom, boom. And this is just another one. But Eric Bieniemy, giving him the keys to the offense, I think would be a steal. Because, I mean, Eric Bieniemy probably should have been hired. He had some off-the-field issues that I wonder if people are still, not still like they weren't important and serious. But I wonder if that's the catalyst for why he hasn't been hired as a head coach. I'm not sure. And I don't know. I'm not here to speculate. But I feel like it could be, a diamond in the rough to why Eric Bieniemy is just – it would be like a better version of Josh McDaniels, you'd hope. Because Bill Belichick relied on Josh McDaniels for the offense. But first of all, he had Tom Brady. And second of all, that defense and special teams were so good that the offense was able to eat in ways that other teams' offenses couldn't. But I feel like with Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid both being offensive-minded guys, obviously, having a dynamic talent like Kyler Murray, I feel like that'd be a match made in heaven. Or it's going to absolutely blow up in everybody's face, and Kyler Murray is going to get traded, and we're going to talk about something completely different in 2024. My brain can't crunch those numbers right now. I don't have the wherewithal or the aptitude or the acumen or the emotional strength to be able to talk about that right now. But if you bring in Jonathan Gannon, you keep Vance Joseph, and you hire Eric Bieniemy, I think that that's a home run with Monti Ossenfort leading the charge. I do. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I don't think that Jonathan Gannon's a bad hire. I don't. I just saw some Cliff Kingsbury in him on the biggest stage. That's all. And that just makes me wary. I still have a little, I don't want to talk poorly about the coaching staff and the GM. I don't want to. I just feel like it's doing you a disservice if I talk positively about something that's not a positive situation. And that's why I do it. So having hesitancy with the hire, and sure, you're going to have hesitancy with any first-year head coach. A lot of this is, uncalculatable, something like that. Like, you can't tell the future on who's going to be a good head coach and who isn't. But as of now, what the Cardinals, Michael Bidwill, et cetera, have set themselves up for is the ushering in of the Arizona Cardinals 2.0, which is something that is incredibly exciting, scary, unsettling, uncertain. We're going into the mist here. We don't know what the Arizona Cardinals are going to be like. We don't know what Kyler Murray's timetable is right now. We don't know what this draft is going to look like. We don't know what the free agency is going to look like. We don't know how many players on the roster right now, under contract or otherwise, will be Arizona Cardinals in 2023. And I feel like for the first time, I've been in sports radio in Phoenix for 10 years. I feel like for the first time ever, since I've been here in 10 years, 12 years, uncertainty and the unknown is more comforting than potentially running back what we've seen. Give me uncertainty. Give me some wrong. Give me disruption. Give me something that feels weird, awkward. Oh, this isn't going to work. Give me that. Because at least you can look back and say, you know what? What's happened doesn't work. Go disrupt things. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And that's why I don't say that this is a bad hire. I say that I would have chosen Lou Anarumo because I've seen some Cliff Kingsbury tendencies in Jonathan Gannon. But I'm also in the camp for, let's roll, baby, whatever. You make the right call. You hired your GM. You give the GM the power to do it. Cool. Let's go. Giddy up onto the draft. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Does this change what the Cardinals will do in the draft? And I'm going to talk about all of this so much more in depth, but I wanted to really go top heavy with topics today because Arizona Cardinals 2.0 is here, baby, and it's exciting. Locked On Cardinals, the draft, Jonathan Gannon, Monti Ossenfort. What does it mean? I will talk about it next. First, Built Bar. Okay. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Built Bar. We just got through the holidays. Okay. I gained a 15er for sure from November through January. Working from home is tough sometimes. But if I want to replace the red velvet cake that I was eating with something sweet and that's actually good for you, Built Bar is the way to go. They're all covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but the macros are insane. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around. Remember, I would say for those that have been listening for a long time, thank you. Say go to Built.com, go to the website, order your box. Go to Built.com, order your box. You don't have to do that anymore. You got a Walmart around you, you got a Sam's Club, you're in good shape. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate or coconut puffs. Puffs are protein-infused marshmallow, by the way. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie, batter, or churro. You can thank me later. Whew. Well, it happened. And I don't fault Michael Bidwill for it taking so long. Early on, it was kind of like, well, this feels like free agency last year. Uncertainty, ambivalence. It's just, they got the guy they wanted. They had to wait till after the Super Bowl to talk to him. Seemed like this was the plan all along. We just didn't know it. It's not like, oh, I forgot. There were 2 teams playing in the Super Bowl. Let's interview the defensive coordinator and hire him less than 24 hours. What was it? 40 hours or something since the Super Bowl. This seemed to be the plan. I mean, his name came up early on in discussions. And then, you kind of had to put it on ice because they were still playing and didn't have a chance to interview him. So Jonathan Gannon, new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. I think Eric Bieniemy would be a great fit at OC. It seems kind of like an arranged marriage where it's like there's no real, boop, boop. But I don't think a first-time head coach should be able to bring anybody. I feel like a first-time offensive head coach shouldn't be allowed to call plays. And I feel like a defensive head coach shouldn't be able to pick his team. I just don't. So if Monti Ossenfort and Michael Bidwill are like, listen, let's go get a proven offensive mind and let's go get a proven defensive mind. I don't know. I don't know what this means for Vance Joseph. We'll be monitoring the situation. I just look at this. I'm like, you know what? Fine. Let's go. Better than before. Let's roll. And one of my favorite things was to say, right when, like in the middle of 2020, when the Cardinals started, won a couple games, the Hail Murray, it's like, as long as it's not a step back, that's a good thing. And there were some step backs at the end of 2020 and definitely in the second part of 2021, but as long as it's not a step back, that's a good thing. And that's where we're at. That's where, because nobody knows. Oh, well, the logistics, nobody knows what's going to happen. And people who are experts say, oh, it's guaranteed this can happen or guaranteed this can happen. Nobody knows. But what you do know is that if you can put smart people, talented people in a situation to succeed, that's the best situation you can have your team in. And that's where the Cardinals are now from their coaching staff. And the fact that they're going to have a head coach and an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator is going to be massively important. So Eric Bieniemy, sure, be the guy. Who do the Cardinals draft at 3 overall? Do they trade back? I think at this point, unless Chicago drafts Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, number 1, like mock draft Monday is coming back soon. I'm going to have a bunch of draft people on. We've got 2 new hosts from Locked On NFL Draft, 2 genius minds. You're going to get so much draft information. You're going to choke. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be Disneyland, the draft Disneyland. But if Will Anderson's there at 3, the Cardinals need to draft him. This is the situation where you look at the Cardinals roster. I mean, and let me step back for a second. Unless you get offered 2 first-round picks and a second this year, like unless you get a sweetheart deal for a team that's trying to outbid another team, like what Miami got from San Francisco when San Francisco traded up to 3 to draft Trey Lance, what you hope happens is it goes quarterback, and Indy may move up to number 1. Tennessee, my boy Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, my Thursday Locked On NFL host, it's like, no, don't do it. If they move up to number 1, like who knows? Craziness happens. There's going to be trades. And the Cardinals, you hope, will be in a situation to just acquire top picks if they're going to trade back. And you can make the claim, well, it's Monti Ossenfort, it's not Steve Keim. Let's give it a whirl. You get an extra first-round pick by moving down 6 or 7 picks this year. It's a different situation. It's circumstantial. We can talk about it then. But if it's a stick and stay, you draft Will Anderson, you move the hell on. Because the Cardinals roster right now needs boxes checked. And if you look at the roster right now, currently, out of the 22 starters, how many boxes are checked? Set and forget. Let's go through a little exercise. Tight end, okay. Hollywood Brown, James Conner, Kyler Murray. That's 4 on offense. We don't know. Is it Rondale Moore? Don't know. Is it Greg Dortch? Don't know. Is it any of the offensive linemen not named DJ Humphries? I mean, DJ Humphries 5? Maybe. That's an honorable mention. We don't know what DJ Humphries is going to look like next season. Budda Baker 6, Jalen Thompson 7, Zach Allen, if they re-sign him, 8, Zaven Collins 9. Those are box checkers. Isaiah Simmons, maybe. Byron Murphy, maybe. We don't know if he's going to be on the team next year. There's less than 50% certainty for who the starters will be for the Arizona Cardinals in 2023. So when you can get a guy that is a set and forget pass rusher at 3, you take it. And that's why it's somewhat playing with fire, trading back. Even though the Cardinals need as much draft capital as possible to build out this roster in an inexpensive fashion early on because of how much money Kyler Murray is going to eat into the cap. Keep it simple. This is the clunkiness. This is the growing pains. These are the Arizona Cardinals movements as, a teenager with braces who just, whose voice just dropped. Okay. Like we're going through adolescence here with how the Arizona Cardinals state was when Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury were removed from it. So I'm a huge proponent of stick and pick unless you get a sweetheart deal that you just cannot pass up. The Cardinals, 22 starters with full health, whatever. Say you're playing Madden. How many of them are guaranteed to be impact players at the position they're in 2023? Under half. And that's why drafting a defensive player with a defensive-minded head coach, like if they were to have signed or hired Shane Steichen or another offensive-minded guy, you could get weird with the 3rd overall pick. Like it changes everything. It changes everything. I'd be more inclined if they traded back. But if you have a defensive-minded guy and you have a can't-miss edge rusher from a powerhouse college with the numbers that he has, set and forget. Pick and forget. Jonathan Gannon, new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. We'll see. I'll go more in depth tomorrow about this and more.